The yellow shift premium line on my pay stub had been crossed out in blue ink. Denise Hall from Payroll tapped the mark with one square fingernail, while the whole night crew watched through the glass office wall. "Your shift premium is gone. You were never the lead." Victor Shaw stood beside the door with my badge in his hand. He dug his thumbnail under the silver lead stripe and peeled it off in one slow piece. They expected me to accept the reduced pay in silence. Denise had even placed a pen beside the revised compensation form, angled toward my right hand. Behind her, a blue Meridian Air binder sat open on the filing cabinet. The official training roster was visible inside it. My name was still beside every crew sign-off. Night Training Lead, Lena Ortiz. I looked from the roster to Victor. He saw what I was looking at and closed the binder. That was when I understood this wasn't a payroll mistake. 8 weeks earlier, Victor had found me on my knees inside a double-door meal cart with a flashlight between my teeth. The cart had cleared sanitation. The rinse strip was signed, the wheels were wrapped, and a green release tag hung from the handle. It looked clean enough to eat off, which was close to the standard when the thing would be carrying 240 airline meals over the Atlantic. I ran a protein swab beneath the lower door seal and watched the tip turn gray. "Damn it," I said around the flashlight. "Good morning to you, too." Victor's shoes appeared outside the cart. Polished brown leather, narrow toes, no slip-resistant soles. Management shoes. I backed out and held up the swab. Turkey gravy. You can identify gravy by shade now? I can identify Earl's shortcuts by location. Across the wash floor, Earl bent and lifted both hands. I heard my name and I reject the accusation. "You wiped around the gasket." I wiped the gasket. "You wiped the part visible from a standing position. That's the part God intended us to see." Victor almost smiled. He was good at stopping a smile before it became evidence. The flight kitchen at 2 a.m. had its own weather. Steam rolled from the rack washer. The chemical dispensers clicked and sighed. Aluminum drawers rattled along the conveyor while the overhead fans pushed warm air that smelled like sanitizer. Wet cardboard and onions cooked somewhere far beyond recovery. Victor crouched beside me, careful of his pants. Could Meridian catch that? That's why Meridian pays auditors. What would it take to keep them from catching it? Clean it. He waited. That was one of his talents. Victor could make silence feel like a form with a blank field you were responsible for completing. I tossed the failed swab into the red bin. The overnight crew needs retraining. Half of them came from tray assembly. They know labels and counts, but they don't know cart seams, drain angles, or allergen order. Earl's been showing them how to finish fast. Earl called from the other side of the floor. Efficiency is a transferable skill. So is food poisoning, I called back. Victor straightened. My office. When you're done insulting everyone. I'm building morale. You're building something. His office overlooked sanitation and dispatch through 2 glass walls. People called it the aquarium because anything said inside became a silent movie for everyone working below. Victor kept it aggressively tidy. A black notebook, a laptop, and a ceramic cup shaped like an airplane turbine sat on his desk. The cup had been a gift from Meridian after he helped save a holiday launch 2 years before. He used it for binder clips. He put a staffing chart in front of me. 12 names were highlighted on the nightline. I knew 4. The other 8 had arrived within the last month. Meridian added the Madrid leg, he said. First departure is 8 weeks from Thursday. Their quality team wants a fully trained, dedicated sanitation crew and complete verification records before launch. How fully trained? As fully as required. That sentence is why auditors exist. His jaw moved once. Every task on the client matrix, carts, ovens, service drawers, beverage inserts, bonded storage handoff, we have the labor. We need somebody who knows the work. You have 3 crew leads. Day shift is tied up with the domestic expansion. Swing shift has Atlas charter. Earl is efficient? Victor leaned back. Earl keeps throughput moving and leaves gravy in places God can't see. I need a night training lead. I looked at the chart again. My name wasn't on it. Victor slid a second page toward me. Temporary lead assignment. 8 weeks. An extra $1.85 an hour plus authorization for 6 overtime hours a week during the first month. I read it twice. The extra money mattered enough that I hated how quickly I calculated it. My mother had just signed a lease on an apartment 10 minutes from mine after living an hour away for 23 years. She could cover the rent, but deposits had a way of multiplying. Utility deposit, pet deposit for a cat that treated her with active contempt, movers who discovered stairs after giving their estimate. I'd been spending Saturdays plating miniature crab cakes at hotel weddings with my cousin Maribel. The catering money paid well, but by Sunday morning my feet felt like someone had hammered nails into them. "This says temporary," I said. "The launch period is temporary. The crew won't stop needing a lead after launch. We'll evaluate the structure once the route is stable. Who owns final sign-off? You. Who assigns stations? You. Who can pull a cart back from dispatch? You, if there's a documented quality issue. And when dispatch starts screaming, I'll tell them to scream at me." That answer surprised me enough to look up. Victor wasn't careless. He understood operations better than most managers I'd worked under. He could glance at a staging lane and tell which departure would miss its truck. He remembered who could handle bonded inventory and who froze when a supervisor raised his voice. He also treated labor hours like water leaking through his ceiling. "You put all of that in writing," I said, "and I'll do it." His expression sharpened, almost pleased. Done. He signed before I did. That night, I ate breakfast at my mother's apartment on a cardboard box marked books, though every book she owned was already shelved by color in the living room. She pushed a plate of scrambled eggs toward me. "You're sure this place isn't too close?" "To what?" "You. You asked me to find something close. I wanted to see what you'd choose. I chose 10 minutes. Yes, very revealing." Her cat, Milton, climbed into an empty cabinet and stared at us as if we had broken into his home. My mother was 68 and built like a sparrow with good posture. She had retired from the county clerk's office 3 years earlier and still dressed for breakfast as if a taxpayer might appear with a records request. I showed her Victor's assignment letter. $1.85, she said, per hour. I understood the arithmetic. I'm considering the insult. It adds up. So, do pennies in a jar. You're training 12 people? 11, technically. Tasha Green already knows most of the domestic cart line. And after 8 weeks, we evaluate the structure. My mother lowered the paper. Who said that? Victor. Then it means he hasn't decided how much truth you can afford. Maribel arrived carrying coffee and a roll of shelf liner under one arm. She was 52, loud in hotel kitchens, soft everywhere else, and incapable of entering a room without bringing an object that implied work. "What are we evaluating?" she asked. "Lena's new promotion. Temporary assignment." Maribel handed me a coffee. "Temporary work spends permanent energy. It comes with overtime." That's how they make permanent energy sound lucky. I took the letter back. "Can either of you say congratulations like normal people?" My mother raised her orange juice. "Congratulations." Maribel touched her coffee cup to it. "Document everything." That was almost normal. Best I can do before noon. The new crew gathered at 11 the following night in the dry staging area, wearing white coats, hairnets, and expressions that ranged from alert to personally betrayed. I passed out copies of Meridian's sanitation matrix. "We're going to start with meal carts," I said. "By next week, you'll hate meal carts. By week 3, you'll dream about meal carts. If you're still dreaming about them by launch, talk to somebody." A man named Curtis glanced over the 6-page matrix. "We have to memorize this. You have to perform it. Memory usually shows up after repetition and resentment." Tasha laughed. She had worked tray assembly for 6 years and transferred to nights for the premium. She was tall, quick, and so controlled in her movements that crowded spaces seemed to organize themselves around her. She pointed to the final column. Trainer initials and employee sign-off? Both required. My initials say I watched you do it correctly. Your signature says you were shown the procedure and performed it. Don't sign a blank row. Don't let anyone ask you to. Curtis looked toward Victor's office. Victor was watching from behind the glass. Yes, I said. That includes management. A few people smiled without moving their mouths. I clipped the master roster to a blue board and used my red grease pencil to write the date across the top. The pencil had lived in my pocket notebook for years, short enough that the paper wrapper was gone from the bottom inch. Regular pens slipped on wet tags. Grease pencil wrote through steam, condensation, and the thin oil that hid in cart hinges after a wash. The first lesson was door gaskets. I showed them the clean-looking Meridian cart that had failed the week before. Earl had re-washed it, and I'd saved it for training. "Where would you swab?" I asked. Curtis pointed to the handle. Tasha crouched and examined the lower seam. Inside edge of the gasket. Why? Because a standing person can't see it. From the back, Earl said, "I feel this lesson has become hostile." I hadn't invited him. Victor had. "You're here as a resource," Victor said. "I have become a cautionary resource." "That's still a resource," Tasha said. Earl pressed a hand to his chest. "You see how quickly she's learned disrespect?" The tension broke. Even Curtis laughed. That first week, I learned who rushed, who panicked, who pretended to understand, and who was embarrassed to ask for help. Curtis counted his motions under his breath. Nia Patel could spot a damaged seal from 20 feet away, but mixed up chemical dwell times whenever anyone watched her. Bo Ramsey was nearly 60, new to airline catering after 3 decades in a hospital laundry, and handled every stainless steel surface as if it might file a complaint. Tasha absorbed everything. She also caught me cutting corners on myself. At 4 one morning, she found me filling out 3 missed temperature logs at once. "You told us to record at the time of the check." I did the checks. "At the time?" I looked at her. She held out the red pencil. "Trainer initials and employee sign-off." I took it. "You're enjoying this." "A little." By the end of week 2, the crew could strip, wash, inspect, and release a standard meal cart without me speaking. At the end of week 3, Meridian changed the galley configuration for Madrid and sent 48 new carts with recessed latch channels that trapped rinse water. Victor wanted them in rotation immediately. "They arrived clean," he said. "They arrived wrapped," I said. "That's a statement about plastic. We lose a day if you inspect every unit. We lose more if residue dries inside those channels." He checked the dispatch schedule. "How long?" 4 hours with 6 people. You get 3 people and 2 hours. Then you get half the carts. His eyes went flat. "This contract carries 32 jobs. Then give me 6 of them for 4 hours. He stared through the office glass at the new carts lined in silver rows. I could almost see the columns moving in his head. Labor, departure times, penalty exposure. 4 people, he said. 3 hours. I'll move dispatch prep to swing shift. It was a fair operational compromise. Victor was good at those when the facts cornered him early enough. We found residue in 11 latch channels and a metal shaving in 1 wheel housing. I marked each failure with the red pencil, a short line on green tape. Victor photographed the shaving himself and sent the receiving claim before sunrise. That morning, he brought coffee to the wash floor. "For Lena," Earl announced, watching Victor set the cup near my clipboard. "Management has chosen a favorite." Victor ignored him. Meridian approved the receiving claim. They also asked for our inspection notes. "I'll clean them up." "Send them as they are." They're grease pencil on a wet clipboard. They're clear. It was the closest Victor came to praise. I carried it home like something fragile. By the 6th week, every name on the official roster had begun filling with signatures. My initials sat beside each one in red. Victor submitted scanned copies to Meridian every Friday, and Evelyn Park from Client Quality replied with brief, precise questions that told me she actually read them. "Please clarify retraining after Cart 7 latch failure." Why did 3 employees repeat allergen order verification? Confirm Lena Ortiz retains final release authority through launch. Victor forwarded the last question to me with 2 words. Confirmed. Good. The first Madrid flight left on a Thursday morning at 7:10. I stood at the dispatch doors while rain needled the loading dock and the last truck pulled away carrying carts my crew had cleaned, checked, sealed, and signed. Tasha bumped my shoulder with hers. So this is the part where we hate meal carts? You're behind schedule. I dreamed about one Tuesday. What happened? It asked me to verify the rinse temperature. And I told it to fill out its own log. We laughed hard enough that Earl leaned out of the wash area to see what he was missing. Up in the aquarium, Victor raised his turbine-shaped cup toward us. The following Friday, my paycheck included the premium, all 6 overtime hours, and the retroactive adjustment for the first training night. I folded the stub into my pocket notebook beside the red grease pencil. For the first time in months, I told Maribel I wouldn't be available for Saturday catering. I bought my mother a narrow oak table for the breakfast nook in her new apartment, and the 3 of us ate Sunday dinner there while Milton stalked our ankles. On Monday night, the rotating shift board appeared. My name had been erased from the lead row. At the top, in Victor's neat block handwriting, were 3 new words. Structure under review. The pay stub arrived Thursday. By the time Victor closed the Meridian binder, my hand was nowhere near Denise's pen. What does the form say? I asked. Denise folded her hands over it. It confirms your job classification as sanitation technician. That was my classification before the assignment, and it remains your classification. What happened to temporary night training lead? Victor dropped the peeled silver stripe into the trash beside her desk. It landed adhesive side up. The launch assignment ended, he said. Then why am I losing the shift premium from Monday onward? Night shift still gets a premium. Denise's eyes moved to him. Victor said, the $1.85 was tied to the additional launch duties. You called it a shift premium. The payroll code calls it a shift premium. The assignment letter calls it a shift premium. The assignment letter was generated from the payroll code. I stared at him. That explanation just walked in a circle. It's a temporary lead differential, Denise said. The system only has one code for it. Then say differential. She turned the form around and pointed to a paragraph in smaller print. This confirms the temporary assignment concluded after the launch milestone. Your regular base rate continues unchanged. And the crew? We're piloting a rotating responsibility model, Victor said. Experienced technicians will handle routine coordination. Which experienced technicians? The board lists them. The board listed Earl, me, and Tasha. Earl had never completed Meridian's allergen order verification. Tasha had completed it 3 weeks earlier under my supervision. You've got me rotating through the lead row. For coordination. Final release? Quality is everybody's responsibility. That's a poster, Victor. Who can hold a cart? Any technician can flag an issue. Who makes the decision when dispatch wants it released? He rubbed the corner of the blue binder with his thumb. The shift supervisor. Our shift supervisor covers 3 departments and spends half the night in bonded storage. He has a radio. He leaves it on his desk. Denise looked toward the window. Everyone on the floor had discovered a reason to work facing us. Victor lowered his voice. This does not need to become theater. You peeled my badge in front of 12 people. It was an outdated designation. Then why keep my name on the rotation? Because you have experience. That experience had a price last week. His face changed at that. The professional patience stayed in place, but something harder moved behind it. Denise pushed the pen closer. You can take time to read the form. I've read enough to know I'm not signing it. I picked up my pay stub. You're refusing an acknowledgement of your current classification? Victor asked. I'm refusing to say the last 8 weeks didn't happen. No one is saying that. Denise's form said it more quietly. I left the office and felt 12 people become fascinated by stainless steel. Tasha was wiping an already clean release table. You okay? Apparently I'm experienced. That sounds dangerous. It's very affordable. She glanced up at the aquarium. Denise had reopened the blue binder. Victor reached over and shut it again before moving it to the shelf behind his desk. Tasha's rag slowed. That the launch book? Looks like it. My signature's in there. Mine too. Earl stepped between us carrying a bundle of green release tags. His lead stripe was still on his badge, but it had started peeling at one corner from months of chemical mist. Heard we're a democracy now, he said. Did the democracy authorize you to release Meridian carts? I asked. Victor said senior techs will coordinate. Coordinate what? He shook the tags. The coordinating. Tasha looked at me. I feel safer already. Earl's smile thinned. He had enjoyed being the harmless, smart mouth while I held responsibility. The rotation had handed him something he wanted and exposed what he didn't know. Look, he said, quieter. I didn't ask them to take your stripe, but you're keeping yours. I've been lead for 9 years. On domestic equipment, Meridian has separate procedures. A dirty cart doesn't know where it's flying. An auditor does. He turned the bundle of tags over in his hands. Victor said you'd help us transition. There it was, the lead work moving toward me without its name or pay. I'll answer the same questions any technician would, I said. I won't do final checks, assign stations, or sign training records. You want us to fail? I want the person making the decision to own the decision. Earl looked hurt, which annoyed me more than anger would have. We're all standing in the same chemical fog, Lena. Then ask Victor why one of us became too expensive after the hard part was finished. I went to my station. For 3 nights, the rotation survived through old habits. The crew kept looking at me when something went wrong, and I kept directing their questions to the name written in the lead row. On Earl's night, dispatch brought back a beverage insert with a cracked drain plug. Can it go? Curtis asked me. Ask Earl. Earl said, ask you. Then Earl hasn't answered. Curtis shifted the insert from one hand to the other. Truck closes in 12 minutes. I can tell you the crack holds residue. I can't release it, so it can't go. You need a decision from the person coordinating. Curtis stared at me for a moment, then marched across the floor. Earl released a replacement 6 minutes late and took the dispatch complaint. He spent the rest of the shift speaking to me only through nouns. Swabs. Cabinet. Paperwork. Tasha's first rotation went better because she refused to pretend. She arrived 40 minutes early with the Meridian matrix folded in her coat pocket. I'm supposed to coordinate tonight, she said. I saw the board. I've never done bonded storage handoff. You observed it twice. Observing Earl parallel park doesn't qualify me to drive his truck. Nothing qualifies you to drive Earl's truck. It smells like boiled peanuts and regret. I laughed before I could stop myself. She pulled out the matrix. Will you train me on the handoff? Victor's responsible for assigning qualified people. I asked if you would train me. At technician pay? Her mouth tightened, but she nodded. Okay, it would have been easier if she'd gotten angry. Instead, she put the matrix away and found the shift supervisor. He delayed the handoff until he could supervise it himself. Victor arrived at midnight and spent an hour reorganizing the schedule. The next afternoon, an email went to the full crew. The rotating lead was now called Station Coordinator. The duties included work allocation, issue escalation, and completion monitoring. Final release authority belonged to the shift supervisor. Training would occur through peer support within normal workflow. My temporary assignment letter had used work allocation, issue escalation, completion monitoring, final release, and training verification to describe my lead duties. Victor had removed the one phrase that carried legal weight and scattered the rest across people already on the clock. I printed the email at my mother's apartment because my printer had been flashing paper jam since the previous Christmas, despite containing neither paper nor a visible jam. Her new table fit the breakfast nook so precisely that the wall caught the back of each chair. She read Victor's email while Milton attacked the hem of her pants. Peer support, she said. That sounds friendly. It means I do it for free. Then be unfriendly. I still have to work with these people. You can be pleasant and expensive. That should go on a pillow. I'd buy one if somebody else sewed it. I placed the assignment letter beside the email and circled the matching duties with my red grease pencil. The comparison filled most of the page. My mother watched me. Your father used to circle things when he was furious. I'm not furious. He also said that. My father had been gone 6 years. He had driven a city bus for 34 and kept every route change notice in a metal recipe box because management had once disciplined him for following a detour they later claimed they never issued. I looked at the red circles. Did the box help? Eventually. What happened? They removed the discipline. That's it? He wanted a parade too, but traffic was terrible. I smiled. She reached across the table and touched the assignment letter. You don't need to win tonight. You need to remember what happened tonight. The next morning, I filed a written payroll dispute. I attached the lead assignment, the first 6 pay stubs, Victor's rotating responsibility email, and the newer station coordinator email. I requested clarification of the premium code, written confirmation of my duties, and payment for any lead responsibilities assigned after the launch. Denise acknowledged it 11 minutes later. Victor waited until my next shift. He met me at the time clock carrying his black notebook. You filed a formal dispute. I used the formal process. You could have discussed it with me. We discussed it in front of payroll. You accused us of falsifying your role. I asked what my role was. You know exactly what your role was, so write it down. People flowed around us, badges tapping the reader. Victor stepped closer to the wall so we weren't blocking the clock. This crew exists because I made a case for it, he said. Meridian's volume is carrying hours in 3 departments. I'm trying to keep the labor model sustainable after launch. By cutting $1.85, by preventing every temporary duty from becoming a permanent layer. You didn't give me a temporary duty, you gave me responsibility for 12 people and a client launch. And paid you for it, until the work succeeded. His expression tightened. You received every dollar promised through launch. Then stop assigning me the same work. That's what the rotation does. The rotation changes the name. He opened the black notebook. Are you refusing peer support? If a coworker asks how to run the rack washer, I'll help. If you ask me to train, evaluate, assign, or release, I want the role and the premium. Teamwork is part of your existing job description. So is sanitation. You don't ask me to sanitize the payroll office. I'm documenting this conversation. I looked at the notebook. Spell Ortiz right. For a second, his mouth twitched. Then he wrote, Victor didn't threaten me. He did something more effective. The next week's overtime list had 6 names. Mine wasn't one of them. I found him during break. I've had Saturday overtime for 11 months. Overtime is based on operational need. The need suddenly stopped needing me? We're prioritizing cross-training. I trained the people you're giving it to, which is why they're now eligible. The answer was clean, rational, and almost impossible to argue without sounding entitled to hours that were never guaranteed. He knew that. I knew that. My phone buzzed in my pocket. My mother had sent a photograph of a letter from the apartment office. The pet deposit had been charged twice, and the correction wouldn't appear until the following month. You told me not to pay it, she wrote. Is that still the plan? I locked the screen. Victor glanced at the phone and then back at me. Payroll will review your dispute. When? They have their process. And while they take their time, you take my hours. His face cooled. Be careful about assigning motives. You trained me to identify residue in hidden places. That one landed. He closed his notebook. You're very good at your job, Lena. I know. I'm trying to find a version of this where you keep doing it. The sentence stayed with me after he walked away because it sounded almost like concern. At 2:30, Curtis waved me over to a Meridian card in lane 4. The green tag was already attached. "Wheels making a noise," he said. The cart gave a small metallic click when I pushed it. Earl's initials were on the release tag. I crouched, shined my flashlight into the wheel housing, and saw a thin crack running through the mounting bracket. "Pull the tag," I said. Curtis reached for it, then stopped. "Are you making the call?" I looked toward Earl. He was at the far end of the line, arguing with dispatch. The loaded cart was due on a truck in 9 minutes. "I'm identifying a documented quality issue," I said. "Get Earl." Curtis ran. I took out the red grease pencil and drew a line on the green tag beside the cracked bracket number. Victor came onto the floor as Earl hurried over. "What happened?" Victor asked. "Lena held the cart," Earl said. I flagged a cracked wheel mount. Victor crouched, inspected the bracket, and stood. "Pull it from service." Dispatch sent the truck without the cart. The complaint came down before sunrise. At the end of the shift, Victor called me into the aquarium. A corrective action form lay on his desk. The stated issue wasn't the delayed cart. It was failure to follow the station coordinator escalation process. Victor had highlighted the phrase, "chain of escalation," in yellow. I read the form twice. "You approved the hold," I said. "I approved removing the cart after inspection," which happened because I flagged the crack. The issue is procedure. The procedure says any technician can flag a quality issue. You instructed Curtis to pull the release tag. I told him to get Earl, after telling him to pull the tag. The bracket was cracked. Victor sat behind his desk with his hands resting on either side of the form. A correct result doesn't erase an incorrect process. I looked through the glass. The damaged cart waited near maintenance with an orange out-of-service wrap around the handle. If its wheel had folded on the loading dock, 200 pounds of stainless steel could have gone sideways. What would the correct process have looked like? You notify the station coordinator. The coordinator inspects the equipment and escalates to the shift supervisor. Earl was arguing with dispatch. You find him. The truck was closing. You use the radio. He left it on the charger. Then you find the supervisor. Bonded storage. Victor's nostrils flared. You don't get to ignore the process because you believe you can do it better. I did it faster. That isn't the point. It was exactly the point for 8 weeks. He turned the form toward me and offered a pen. I wrote in the employee response box instead. Cracked wheel bracket found after release tag was attached. Immediate flag prevented damaged equipment from entering dispatch. Requested clarification on authority to stop unsafe equipment when assigned coordinator is unavailable. Victor read it. That's not an acknowledgement. It acknowledges what happened. It reframes what happened. So does the first half of the form. He made a copy and handed it to me. Future failures to follow escalation may result in further corrective action. Will Earl receive one for attaching a release tag to a damaged cart? This meeting concerns your conduct. Of course it does. He looked tired then. For 1 second, the polished operations director disappeared, and I saw a man with a route renewal, a labor target, and a crew refusing to fit into his spreadsheet. You're making yourself the story, he said. You put my name on the form. I tucked the copy into my pocket notebook, pressing the red grease pencil deeper into the spine. Denise called me the following afternoon. Her payroll office was quieter during the day. The night crew was gone and sunlight exposed fingerprints on the glass that steam usually hid. She had another form waiting. Your dispute has been reviewed, she said. By who? Payroll and operations. So you and Victor reviewed your own decision. I reviewed the pay records. Operations reviewed the assignment. She kept her tone careful, neither warm nor cold. Denise had worked at SkyTable longer than Victor. She knew how to turn a conversation into a row of boxes. The temporary premium was correctly paid through the Meridian launch, she continued. Based on your concern about transition duties, we can authorize 2 additional weeks. 2 weeks from when? The date of the launch. That gives me 1 week after the premium was removed. It's a compromise. She slid the form across. In exchange for the payment, I would acknowledge that my temporary assignment had concluded and that no continuing lead designation, duties, or compensation were owed. If there are no continuing duties, I said, why does this need my signature? It resolves the dispute. It resolves it for you. It puts money in your check. How much? She had already calculated it. $74 before tax. I thought about the doubled pet deposit, my lost Saturday overtime, my mother's careful way of turning every complaint about money into a joke before I could offer help. Denise watched me read. I know what it's like when timing matters, she said. The sentence carried enough sympathy to make me suspicious. Victor told you about my mother's apartment? He mentioned you had personal expenses. The humiliation was small and hot. I had never told Victor about the apartment. He'd seen a message light up my phone and built the rest from scraps. You shouldn't know that. I'm trying to help. Then correct the classification. I can only administer what operations approves. You can approve $74 if I say Victor's version is true. She folded her hands. Take the form home. At my mother's table, Maribel read every line with the same concentration she used for hotel banquet orders. My mother stood at the counter peeling an orange in one unbroken spiral. $74, Maribel said. That's insulting enough to be interesting. It covers the duplicate deposit. I covered the duplicate deposit, my mother said. I turned toward her. You told me you were waiting. I got tired of waiting. You used your savings. I used money. Savings is just money sitting down. You shouldn't have done that. Neither should the apartment office. You promised me. She set the orange on a plate. I promised I wouldn't let them charge it again. They won't. That isn't what I meant. I know. The room went quiet except for Milton scratching the underside of the table. My mother sat across from me. You bought this table. That doesn't mean you owe me. Exactly. I looked away. Maribel put the payroll form between us. What do you think happens if you sign? I get the money and Victor says the rotating duties are peer support. What happens if you don't? I lose more overtime. Maybe they build a file. And which one scares you? Both. Good, means you're reading the situation. I reached for the pen. My mother said nothing. That was worse than advice. The signature line waited beneath a paragraph that reduced 8 weeks of 12-hour nights to an assignment that had evaporated on schedule. Maribel picked up my red grease pencil and laid it across the line. If they believe you weren't leading, she said, why do they need your agreement now? I stared at the pencil. Milton jumped onto the table, stole an orange peel, and ran. My mother stood. There goes management. I laughed, and the laugh broke something loose in my chest. I returned the form unsigned. My next schedule had me on the rack washer for 4 straight shifts, the hottest, loudest station on the floor. Curtis stopped asking me questions unless we were alone. Nia became intensely polite. Earl used the station coordinator checklist with the grim seriousness of a man defusing a bomb. Tasha kept speaking to me in public, but even she measured the distance to Victor's office first. They're scared, she said during break. I know. You sound mad at them. I can know something and be mad at it. She nodded. Fair. The crew's rhythm changed. People stopped improvising because every unusual decision could become a process violation. Small problems waited for the shift supervisor. Carts backed up near dispatch. Earl got better at Meridian inspections, but the time he spent checking meant he couldn't keep throughput moving the way Victor valued. Victor adjusted. He created checklists, shortened them, and moved several verifications into a single electronic acknowledgement. He began using the phrase standardized workflow in every email. He also stopped writing my name. When a new compact beverage cart arrived for the Madrid route, the training sheet listed Tasha as verified by Knight Peer Group. No trainer initials appeared. I found the sheet clipped near the release station. Did you train on this? I asked her. Earl showed me the drain valve. What about allergen sequence? It's a beverage cart. It carries almond milk inserts. Her eyes moved to the sheet. Victor said the sequence transfers from standard carts. The latch channel is above the drain. If you rinse in standard order, runoff crosses the storage lip. She studied the cart. Show me. I looked toward the aquarium. Victor was at his desk. I'll show you where the client procedure is, I said. We pulled the Meridian matrix from the document station. The compact card appeared in a revision sent after launch. It required a separate demonstration and sign-off. Tasha took the matrix to Earl. He stared at it for a long time. Victor told me existing verification covered variants. Did he put that in writing? She asked. Earl looked toward the aquarium, too. The first allergen swab failure happened 2 nights later. The compact cart had been washed and released during Tasha's rotation. Quality pulled it during a random check after finding protein residue along the storage lip. Victor called Tasha into his office before the end of the shift. When she came out, she carried a corrective action form. What does it say? I asked. That I failed to follow the documented allergen sequence. You weren't signed off on it. The training sheet says I was. The training sheet says Knight Peer Group. It also says I acknowledged competency. Did you? She rubbed both palms down the front of her coat. Victor opened the electronic checklist at the start of shift. He said it was the updated station coordinator acknowledgement. I clicked it. Did he show you the procedures attached? There were 7 links. That isn't a demonstration. I still clicked. She sounded angry at herself, which was exactly where Victor needed the anger to land. Do you have your launch packet? I asked. The paper one? Anything with your original sign-offs. I took copies home when we finished. I thought I might apply for leads somewhere else. Bring them tomorrow. What are you going to do? Help you answer the form. I thought you weren't doing lead work for free. This isn't for Victor. The next night, Tasha brought a thick envelope folded under her coat. Her copy of the official launch roster had my name printed at the top and my red initials beside every procedure she had actually completed. The compact beverage cart wasn't there. It hadn't existed yet. My pocket notebook showed the same gap. On the night we reviewed the revised matrix, I had written, Tasha, compact bev cart, drain only, no allergen demo, Earl present. Earl read the note twice. You wrote that while we were standing there. I write down what affects safety or pay. He handed it back. That's exhausting. It used to be. Tasha attached copies to her response. She wrote that she had never received the required demonstration and requested removal of the discipline. Victor withdrew her corrective action the following day. He called it a coaching opportunity. Tasha called it something else in the parking lot. That was our first clean win. Small, quiet, and useful. It also told Victor exactly what records we had. Within a week, old paper shift sheets disappeared from the document station. New versions appeared with uniform language and typed dates. Denise denied my payroll dispute in writing, citing peer mentoring within my existing classification. Victor asked every station coordinator to sign updated role acknowledgments. Earl signed. Tasha didn't. 2 others refused after she showed them the paragraph that made them responsible for verifying training they hadn't delivered. Then Meridian announced its contract renewal audit. Victor read the email to us during pre-shift. Evelyn Park would arrive at 5 on Tuesday morning and review sanitation records, training verification, and launch to current process continuity. His voice stayed even, but he flattened the paper against the table 3 times. After the meeting, he asked me to remain. You know the launch history better than anyone, he said. I was never the lead. His jaw tightened. I'm asking you to support the audit. At what rate? This is exactly the attitude I've been documenting, and this is exactly the work you've been renaming. He stepped closer. Meridian needs confidence in the operation. If this audit goes badly, the damage won't stop with me. That sounds like responsibility. It sounds like jobs. He was good at finding the place where a boundary could be made to feel selfish. I'll answer any question Evelyn asks about work I performed, I said. I won't certify records I didn't create. Victor held my gaze. Be sure you understand the difference. At 4:58 Tuesday morning, a woman in a navy Meridian jacket entered sanitation, carrying a tablet and a blue binder. She looked past Victor's extended hand, across the crew gathered near the release station, and asked, "Which one of you is Lena Ortiz?" I raised my hand. Evelyn Park walked over and looked at my badge. The adhesive shadow from the silver stripe had collected a gray line of lint. "We've exchanged emails," she said, "through Victor. You sent the receiving notes on the recessed latch cards. I wrote them. They were useful. Victor joined us. Lena has extensive experience on the sanitation line. I thought she'd be helpful for your floor review." Evelyn looked at him. "Your launch records identify her as night training lead. That was a temporary functional designation. What is her function now?" "Sanitation technician." Evelyn glanced back at my badge. "Then who replaced her as training lead?" "We moved to a distributed coordination model." Earl stood close enough to hear. His face took on the expression he usually wore when a drain started backing up. Evelyn tapped something on her tablet. "Show me." Victor led her through the wash floor. For the next hour, she inspected the operation the way a good mechanic listens to an engine. She didn't spend much time on the polished areas Victor had prepared. She ran a gloved finger beneath the drying rack. She checked chemical dates inside the cabinet. She stopped beside Lane 4 and asked Curtis how he handled a failed wheel inspection. Curtis looked at Victor. "Answer from your normal process," Evelyn said. "I flagged the station coordinator. And if that person is unavailable?" "The shift supervisor." "And if the cart is approaching dispatch cutoff?" Curtis swallowed. "I still flag it. Can you hold the cart yourself?" "I can identify a documented quality issue." The phrase had traveled through the crew. Evelyn looked at Victor. "That wasn't my question." "Our technicians are empowered to stop unsafe equipment," he said. I felt the corrective action form inside my pocket notebook. Evelyn moved on. At the compact beverage cart, she asked Tasha to demonstrate the allergen sequence. Tasha performed it correctly. She cleaned from the upper latch channel down, changed cloths before the storage lip, and kept the drain valve open until the final rinse cleared. "Who trained you?" Evelyn asked. Tasha looked at me, then at Earl. "I learned the drain assembly from Earl. Lena showed me the revised client procedure after she found out I hadn't received the allergen demonstration." Evelyn's eyes settled on the electronic training sheet Victor had printed for the audit. "This record says your competency was verified by the night peer group 11 days before that demonstration." I clicked the acknowledgement, Tasha said. "I thought it was for station coordination." "Did you open the attached procedures?" "There were 7 links. I didn't open all of them." Evelyn nodded once. "Thank you for answering directly." Victor stepped in. "We identified a communication gap and coached the team. Where's the corrective record?" It was handled informally. Tasha's mouth moved, but she kept it closed. Evelyn turned to her. "Was a corrective action issued?" "Yes." "Was it withdrawn?" "After I showed that I hadn't been trained." "Who showed that?" "Lena had notes. I had my launch packet." Evelyn looked at me. "May I see the notes?" Victor said, "Personal notebooks aren't part of our controlled record system." "They aren't," I said. "Mine is a contemporaneous work record." I took the notebook from my pocket and opened it to the compact cart entry. The red grease pencil line had rubbed faintly onto the opposite page, but the words were clear. "Tasha, compact bev cart, drain only, no allergen demo. Earl present." Evelyn read it, then handed the notebook to Earl. "Is that accurate?" He rubbed his thumb over the peeling corner of his badge stripe. "Yes." "Were you qualified to verify that procedure at the time?" Victor said the standard cart verification transferred. "Did you review Meridian's revision before training her?" Earl stared at the page. "No." Victor's voice tightened. The revision language was ambiguous. "I wrote it," Evelyn said. That ended the conversation for several seconds. She asked to see the complete launch-to-current training chain. Victor took us to the aquarium. Denise arrived from Payroll 10 minutes later, carrying the employee classification file against her chest. The glass office filled with too many bodies, so Curtis and Nia watched from the floor while pretending to organize release tags. Victor placed his reconstructed training packet on the desk. The pages were clean. Every station coordinator acknowledgement used the same language. Dates were typed. The records showed a smooth transition from launch training to peer verification. Evelyn flipped through them. "Where are the original launch rosters?" "These incorporate the launch history," Victor said. "I asked for the originals. The controlled originals were archived after the assignment concluded." "I have one." She set her blue Meridian binder on Denise's desk. Victor's copy of the binder sat on the shelf behind him, the one he had closed during my payroll meeting. Evelyn opened hers. The first divider read, "Madrid Launch Supplier Training Acceptance." Beneath it sat the roster SkyTable had sent Meridian every Friday. 12 crew names ran down the page. My name appeared across the top under Night Training Lead, and my red initials sat beside every procedure each person had completed. Evelyn turned to the next page. My name again, then the next. Every crew sign-off carried my initials. Denise shifted the classification file against her chest. Evelyn touched the roster. Meridian accepted this crew for launch because SkyTable certified that these employees were trained and verified by its designated night training lead. Victor kept his voice measured. "For the launch period. Then show me the documented transfer of training authority after launch." He pulled one of the station coordinator forms forward. "We decentralized routine verification among qualified senior technicians. This form acknowledges coordination duties. It doesn't qualify anyone to train. The underlying procedures were unchanged. The compact cart revision changed them. That was one equipment variant. It caused a failed allergen swab, a failure we corrected before dispatch. After your former training lead found the gap." Victor looked at me, and for once he had nothing ready. Denise opened her file. From a payroll standpoint, Ms. Ortiz was never formally classified as a lead. She received a temporary premium associated with launch support. Evelyn studied her. "You're saying the woman identified to my company as night training lead was never the lead?" Her base classification remained technician. "That distinction belongs to your payroll system. This roster belongs to the contract." She turned the binder so Denise could read the page. SkyTable used Ms. Ortiz's authority to certify every member of this night crew. You continued relying on those certifications after removing the role internally. Now you're asking Meridian to accept later training through an undefined peer group. Victor folded his arms. "What corrective action are you seeking?" It was the right question. He had stopped trying to win the wording and moved to the consequence. Evelyn answered just as directly. "First, reconcile your internal designation with the representation you made to Meridian. That includes confirmation from Payroll that the employee who performed and continues to support lead-level training was compensated under the applicable assignment." Denise started to speak. Evelyn continued. "Second, provide a valid chain of training authority from launch to the current operation. If SkyTable maintains that Ms. Ortiz's lead designation ended and no qualified person replaced her, the launch certifications remain historical, and every employee handling revised procedures will require supervised retraining before Meridian accepts the current records. 12 people. Every revised cart, insert, oven rack, and bonded handoff. Dozens of paid hours against the same labor target Victor had been protecting. And if we reconcile the assignment?" he asked. "Then Ms. Ortiz's original certifications remain the foundation of the training chain. You still need qualified alternates and clean records for revisions. Does Meridian intend to suspend the route?" "I'm placing training continuity under corrective review. Current operations can continue for 72 hours while SkyTable submits its plan. Failure to resolve it will affect renewal approval." Victor nodded slowly. "Understood." Evelyn closed the binder. The sound was soft. It carried through the glass anyway. She looked at me. Do these records accurately reflect the training you performed? They do through launch. And after launch? I trained people when I was assigned and paid to train. After the premium was removed, I answered routine coworker questions. I didn't verify new competency. Did management ask you to? Yes. Did you document your response? I removed Denise's unsigned settlement form and the payroll denial from my notebook. The red grease pencil had left a mark across the signature line. Evelyn read them without comment and returned them to me. Victor stared at the red line. The audit continued for another 2 hours. Evelyn found 3 minor sanitation issues, 1 mislabeled chemical bottle, and a cart seal log. Earl had completed correctly enough to surprise both of us. By the time she left, Victor's prepared packet had been separated into 2 stacks, accepted operational records and training records requiring correction. At the door, Evelyn shook Tasha's hand. Direct answers save time, she said. Then she looked at me. Keep your original notes. I plan to. Victor stayed in the aquarium after she left. He sat behind the desk with the blue binder open in front of him. Denise called me in before my shift ended. She placed a new calculation on the desk. It restored the premium from the Monday after launch through the current pay period. The amount was larger than $74. This covers the differential, she said. What about the Saturday overtime? Overtime isn't guaranteed. It was removed after I filed the dispute. Victor says he prioritized cross-training. The people receiving it were people I trained. My hours for the previous 11 months are in your system. She pressed her lips together. I can review the average, she said. Put that in writing. You've become very attached to that phrase. It saved us both time. She looked at me over the top of the calculation. For what it's worth, I should have asked more questions before the first meeting. It wasn't an apology. It was closer than I expected from Denise. Ask them now, I said. The company submitted its corrective plan near the end of Evelyn's 72-hour window. Training documentation moved under quality control, with payroll copied on every compensated assignment. Station coordinators could manage workflow, but only qualified trainers could sign competency records. Each employee would receive a copy of anything bearing their signature. Victor lost the authority to create or end training premiums by himself. He kept his job. For a week, he spoke mostly in emails. He corrected the labor plan, rebuilt the training schedule, and sat through every meeting Meridian required. His prized rotating model survived for routine coordination and died everywhere it had been used to hide lead work. Earl completed formal Meridian trainer qualification. I had to demonstrate gasket cleaning to Evelyn on video, he told me. She asked why I was standing up. What did you say? I said God had revised his intentions. Tasha laughed so hard she had to lean against a cart. Victor asked me into the aquarium the following Monday. The revised offer waited on his desk. Permanent night training lead. The $85 differential, restored and protected under a separate training code. 6 hours of scheduled administrative time per pay period. Authority to hold equipment for documented quality concerns. Tasha would be my designated alternate once she completed qualification. You asked for the alternate? I said. She's good. She is. She's also willing to tell an auditor exactly what happened. That's part of why she's good. Victor sat down. The overtime review will reimburse your average missed hours from the date of your dispute. Payroll will process it next cycle. I read every page. You built a strong crew, he said. I know. His eyes moved toward the floor. I was trying to keep it without carrying another permanent layer into renewal. You were trying to keep the work without carrying the person who did it. That wasn't how I saw it. It was how you priced it. He let that sit. I should have handled the transition differently, he said. Differently is doing a lot of work there. Yes. The word came out flat but honest. I tapped the offer. Training time gets its own labor code. The crew receives copies of every roster and every revision acknowledgement. My final release authority needs to include dispatch cutoff, or we'll have the same argument with a truck waiting. I can approve the first two. You need quality to approve the third. I'll take it to quality. Before I sign. A tired smile touched one side of his mouth. You always this pleasant when negotiating? My mother says I'm pleasant and expensive. She's right about half of that. I'll tell her you said so. Please don't. 2 days later, the corrected offer arrived. I signed it with Denise's pen. My back pay covered my mother's duplicate deposit, the money she had taken from savings, and several weeks of groceries she insisted she didn't need. She accepted the deposit money after I threatened to buy Milton an automated litter box that played music. Cruelty has changed you, she said, taking the check. Maribel held up the corrected assignment letter. Permanent. Permanent enough to require notice. And copies? Everybody gets copies. She slid my red grease pencil across the table. Then this thing can retire. I picked it up. The tip had worn blunt. It has one launch left. Meridian renewed the contract the following month. On the first night of the renewed schedule, I stood beside Tasha at the release station while she completed her final alternate trainer demonstration. She inspected the recessed latch channel, checked the drain angle, and ran a swab beneath the storage lip. The result stayed clean. Release? She asked. You tell me. She reviewed the temperature strip, seal number, and wheel brackets. Release. I signed beside her name on the new roster. She signed beneath mine, then tore off her copy and folded it into her pocket. My silver stripe was back on my badge. Across the floor, Earl caught me looking at his cart and crouched to inspect the lower gasket before I could say a word. I sharpened the red grease pencil against the metal clip of my notebook and drew one clean line beneath the completed checks. Then I wrote my name where it belonged.